Canto 10, Chapter 73, starting with text 15, for those of you that like to follow along. 10, 73, 15. The title of the chapter, Krishna Blesses the Liberated Kings. The scene is in the capital of the Magadha kingdom of Jarasandha, where a plan was made by Uddhava way back in Dwarka to defeat Jarasandha in a clever way. And the purpose of defeating Jarasandha had many outcomes, but one of those outcomes was liberating the kings who had been imprisoned by Jarasandha. In the beginning of the previous chapter, 72, yes, 72, so maybe it was 71, Krishna was visited in Dwarka. Yeah, it goes back to chapter 70. Chapter 70 of Canto 10 is entitled Krishna's Daily Activities in Dwarka. So from the time the rooster crowed and he did what he did and went to the royal assembly, Sudharma Assembly Hall, he then sat with Ugrasena. Ugrasena is the king, not Krishna, but celebrated personality in the Yadu dynasty for sure. And they were discussing how to kill Jarasandha, because he was a very terrible person. And the younger generation of the Yadu warriors were really keen on having battle with Jarasandha and his armies. Tula? Haribol? Is there some way to shut this down? Because people are a little, it's nice, but it's distracting. There we go, that was quick, okay. Press a button and thank you. Okay. Krishna has a plan. Certainly, Krishna had a plan for Yudhishthira. Krishna had a plan for Jarasandha. Krishna had a plan for the kings. He was a chess player with 10 moves way ahead of the game. Something like that. And it happens as he plans it. So, he's seated in the royal assembly, and there's a discussion how to finish Jarasandha. And the younger warriors are very enthusiastic too. Kshatriyas like combat. They're not intimidated by it, provided it's religious. Combat, they like. While they were discussing, two things happened. First, a messenger came from Magadha province on behalf of the 20,000 kings that were in prison, appealing on their behalf, appealing to Krishna to relieve them of this terrible situation. They wanted freedom from the jail, and they wanted to be reinstated in their kingdoms. Just as he finished, Narada arrived with a second message. The second message was from Yudhishthira. And Krishna knew what the message was before he came. Narada knew what the purpose of the message was before he came. It wasn't just that the message from Yudhisthira was quite simple. He had been living in, not in Hastinapur, but in Indraprastha for some time, with a big, assembly. The whole city grew in the middle of a forest. And he was interested in conducting a Rajasuya Yagya. Rajasuya Yagya is called the Raja of all Yagyas, the king of all Yagyas, not just because what it's meant to do, it's meant to establish an emperor of all kings, an emperor of the world. But various devas would be invited to sanctify the emperor to do his service of ruling the world. For a religious person, that's very important, getting the sanction of the demigods to do their various services. And the way that Narada introduced what Yudhisthira's intention was sovereignty, rule, like, Kshatriya to rule. And with that, have enormous wealth, because the ruling emperor receives tribute or tax from the other kings, and that makes the emperor very wealthy. So that was the message that was delivered to Krishna. Of course, Krishna knew differently, and Narada knew differently. Narada understood, this is explained specifically, Narada understood that Krishna's intention by sending Narada to bring him a message from Yudhisthira was kill Jarasandha. Because in order to perform what Yudhisthira wanted, all other kings have to either A or B. They have to acknowledge, yes, we're willing to be subservient unto you, and here's some tax. Or B, no, we're not, and we're ready to fight you and all of your armies. So that was the procedure. And Jarasandha wouldn't surrender. It was known. And sure enough, he didn't. And so there was the avenue was to kill Jarasandha. So what did Krishna do? Chapter 20 of this. I want to read some verses from 73, but I'll just have to go a little quicker. Shorten things a bit. Krishna turned to Uddhava, his cousin, and asked him, I'm being asked to do two things, and I can't do both things at the same time. I have to do one and then the other. What is your recommendation? So Uddhava gave a brilliant recommendation, knowing exactly what Krishna wanted him to say, because that was Uddhava's capacity. So he said a number of things, but essentially, Jarasandha should be killed first, because when Jarasandha is killed, then the kings that are in prison can be released. And when Jarasandha is killed first, then Yudhisthira can go ahead and perform the Rajasuya Yagya. And there was some further detail. Jarasandha is so powerful, there's only one person on this planet besides Krishna that is equal in strength. Bhima. So Bhima should challenge him to combat, but he should challenge him to combat not in the city, but outside the city on one-to-one combat. And though the reason that Krishna had for that is explained in the commentary, but Uddhava said what Krishna wanted him to say. Two reasons. If there was a battle with one army against the other army, then many, many innocent people would be killed unnecessarily. So Krishna didn't want that. And the second reason was, if there was a big battle, it would be very costly, and if there was no battle, just a battle with Jarasandha, and Jarasandha was defeated, which means he would be killed, then all the wealth of Jarasandha's kingdom could be given to Yudhisthira to perform the Rajasuya Yagya because enormous wealth is needed. So it's a double purpose. And in order to get Jarasandha to come out of the city and do combat, go in disguise as Brahmanas, because he's well known for being a Duskriti. But he does Kriti, he'll never decline a request of a Brahmana. He's very charitable to the Brahmanas. That was part of where he got his strength. So go in disguise as Brahmanas, request charity as Brahmanas, and he'll oblige you. And then Bhima should fight him. And with you present, Krishna, Bhima will be victorious. But otherwise they're equal. So everyone in the assembly except the junior members of the Yadu dynasty who really wanted to battle, they thought it was a brilliant idea. And the chapter ends. The next chapter begins. 71 is a big, big, big journey with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of details, with all the queens and all their wardrobe and ornaments and jewels, and because they were going to stay for months. So, traveling with a big, each of the queens having 10 sons, each of their sons having 10 sons, and the whole shebang went, in a big caravan with the military and ministers and brahmanas, and must have been quite a scene. So they went all the way from Dwaraka, picture in your mind, from the map of India, and going by foot, horses and elephants and camels and wagons and palanquins and all the way to the kingdom of Jarasandha, which is Bihar or Magadha. It's a long journey. No, they didn't go to Magadha. They went first to Indraprastha. So they went to Indraprastha, and it says that Krishna stayed there to satisfy Yudhisthira. He stayed for 3 months. He stayed for several months. Doesn't give a number. And then after several months, Yudhisthira brought up the topic again. I think now is the time to begin. If you give your consent, we'll begin the arrangements for the Rajasuya Yagya. Krishna said, very good, send your 4 brothers in the 4 directions, and challenging or giving option A or B to each of the kings, and those that give tribute, then we'll use that for the Yagya. So they went in all directions. The one who went east of Indraprastha was Bhima, and the only one that didn't surrender was Jarasandha. He came back and reported that, and Krishna then said, let's do the plan that, I'm keeping it very simple, this is the storyline. But Uddhava already made a plan, let's follow that plan. So the 3, Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima, dressed as Brahmanas, went to the kingdom of Jarasandha, and as if they were Brahmanas, dressed as Brahmanas, came to the king's palace. King came out, received them nicely. Who are these big, strong, powerful-looking persons that are Brahmanas? It doesn't look right. But he didn't complain. So they exchanged back and forth, and they said, there's one thing that we want to fight with you. Oh. Krishna introduced everybody by name. I am Krishna, this is my brother Bhima, that's my brother or cousin Arjuna. So made some remark. What kind of Kshatriyas are you? Kshatriyas don't beg charity. And you're in a disguise as a Brahmana because you're afraid of me. Very well. I'll give you a fight. But I won't fight with Krishna, he's a coward. I won't fight with Arjuna, he's too weak. But he's a good one. So they gave him a big club. In short, the battle went on for 28 days. Breaking clubs and more clubs and using tree trunks and pounding each other with fists. And sometimes it would go this way and sometimes it would go 28 days. It's a long time. On the morning of the 28th day, Bhima said to Krishna, I don't think I can defeat him. We are of equal strength. You know what Krishna did. The celebrated, he took a little twig, broke it in two, bifurcating the twig without saying anything. Bhima understood what he meant, because Jarasandha was put together from two halves to make one. And he threw him down on the ground, put one leg on a foot on one leg, and ripped him in half. And all the citizens of Magadha kingdom saw this. Now, they didn't take arms and start a battle, which sometimes those things happen, but they didn't, because he was defeated in a combat. The first thing that Krishna did after that was his eldest son was established as the next king. And his eldest son was not inimical or demoniac like Jarasandha. And then the next thing he did is he went to the prison where the kings were, and he released them. And there's a beautiful description of his coming before them and what they saw and their prayers. And in their prayers, they indicated that anticipation, because Krishna said to the messenger, tell them, do not fear. I'll come. It's like Masuchaha. Do not fear. And they believed it. Their life for several months was holding on to that thread. Krishna will come and relieve us. So they were very deeply absorbed. They were already Krishna bhaktas, but they became very Krishna conscious, absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, and purified as a result of that. So when Krishna came before them, and they saw his form and all details of the description, very effulgent, very beautiful, etc. Their prayers said they no longer have an interest in their kingdoms, the material opulence that goes with the kingdom. They were very ambitious. They were cruel to their subjects. They were cruel to other kings. They were always in this competitive mode with other kings, filled with anxiety, trying to get more power. So we don't want that anymore. So they didn't say we don't want to go home, but what they did say was, our seeing you as we're seeing you now, we know you're not going to stay here with us forever, but we'd like to be in constant remembrance of you just as we are now. So can you give us the means by which it's within our power to do it, where we can always remember you? The Manmana message. So that's where I'm going to start from. It's 1073:15. Please tell us how we may constantly remember your lotus feet, though we may continue in the cycle of birth and death in this world. Along with their detachment messages before this. We don't want it. We don't want our kingdoms. We just want to always remember you. Now, they could have asked for anything. They could have asked, please bestow prema bhakti upon us. They didn't, because they weren't prepared for that. They were prepared for sadhana to achieve sadhya. And the sadhana was very specific. The purpose of the sadhana was to always remember Krishna. So there's nice instructions, which I'm going to read from, where Krishna is very pleased with them. Again and again we offer our obeisances unto Lord Krishna, Hari, son of Vasudeva, that supreme soul, Govinda, vanquishes the suffering of all who surrender to him. Text 17. Shukadeva Goswami said, thus the kings now freed from bondage, glorified the Supreme Lord. Then, my dear Parikshit, that merciful bestower of shelter spoke to them in a gentle voice. Remember from the yajna yesterday, there were the 4 ministers of Vibhishan. I was a little trying to make it relatable because there are some people in the audience that don't know anything about Ramayana and Sita and Ram and Lakshman and Ravana and Vibhishan and the whole, so they knew nothing. So it was a little different than this evening's audience. So the 4, I'll repeat something from yesterday evening. The 4 ministers, according to the commentators on Ramayana, say, or write, that 2 represent the one who's taking shelter, the different aspects or features of taking shelter, and the other 2 ministers represent the one who's giving shelter, the Sharanagata and the Sharanya, the one who's taking shelter and the one who's giving shelter. So the 2, they're very similar but different. Akinchanatvam, and then the other is Ananya Gati Tvam. Akinchana, having no other shelter, and the other is full dedication of our shelter-taking propensity upon you. It's kind of backwards and forwards at the same time. It's something like the instruction, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Something like that. Full dedication, surrender, full dedication to, so this is the kings also. Full dedicate, their prayers indicate, we have no other shelter. We thought we had other shelters. We have no other shelter. You are our only shelter. And we take shelter of your service, and specifically want to take shelter of constant remembrance of you. And then the other is Saralata, where one gives shelter to anyone who surrenders, and they have the Shakti or the potency to give protection. So they're acknowledging, by your strength, you destroyed, he didn't, but through the agency of Bhima, on his behalf, Jarasandha was destroyed, and no one was able to defeat Jarasandha, something that Uddhava said way back in Dwarka. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful, as was Bhima. Very, very powerful. But he was defeated, and ready to give shelter even to the kings. So the kings looked a wreck. They had been, for a long time in the cave, and scrawny and disheveled and dressed in rags, and they looked bad. They looked awful. They didn't look like powerful kings. And they were suffering. The kings, now freed from bondage, glorified the Supreme Lord. Then, my dear Parikshit, that merciful bestower of shelter spoke to them in a gentle voice. So the instructions that he's going to give to the kings are instructions that are relevant to us. We're not going to become kings. But there's prescribed duties for each of us, and just listen with the view in mind, it's meant for us. We're not kings, but just fill in what your duties are, and you got the formula. From now on, my dear kings, you will have firm devotion to me, the Supreme Self and the Lord of all that be. I assure you this will come to pass just as you desire. So he's giving a benediction. So they're asking for the means of remembrance. He's replying that they will awake, within them will awaken firm devotion. Now when there's firm devotion to what? So the mind goes to Krishna when there's firm devotion. Then there's details. Fortunately, you have come to the proper conclusion, my dear kings, and what you have spoken is true. We have no other shelter. You are our only shelter. We take full shelter of you. I can see that human beings lack of self-restraint, which arises from their intoxication with opulence and power, simply leads to madness. Because this is a lot of what they said. You're right. You had become mad or intoxicated with the wealth that you had and trying to increase more wealth and doing bad things to get more wealth and being neglectful of your citizens, which isn't the duty of a king. That's the opposite. He gives names: Haihaya, Nahusha, Vena, Ravana, Naraka, and many other rulers of the demigods, men and demons, fell from their elevated positions because of infatuation with material opulence. Understanding that this material body and everything connected with it have a beginning and an end, worship me by Vedic sacrifices, and with clear intelligence protect your subjects in accordance with the principles of religion. Now, performance of Vedic sacrifices may have a material purpose, and they may have a spiritual purpose. They're meant to bring one to the spiritual purpose, because all yagyas have one bhokta, or one ultimate enjoyer. And who's that ultimate enjoyer? Is Vishnu. Bhoktaram Jagatapasam. So worship me by, by the performance of Vedic sacrifices. Now they're going to return back to their kingdoms because he's going to request them to do that or instruct them to do that. So as kings, they're going to be in touch with opulence again. So to help it, they're freed from the distraction or the allurement of material opulence, and he's going to ask them to go back into opulence. But the one who has become detached can again become attached. It's not just their suffering has made them detached, it's their bhakti has made them detached. Those several months that Krishna didn't go quickly, because he could have. As soon as he heard in Dwarka, these poor kings, they're my devotees, and Jarasanda's plan was to make a human sacrifice, not just keep them in prison. Mahabhairava, sacrifice, a human sacrifice. He was a bad guy. They weren't just afraid of, anyway, they had become detached from that hankering for kingdom. Krishna is going to send them back to kingdom. But he wants them to be protected from the allurement of opulence again. And so perform Vedic sacrifices. The purpose of them is not to gain opulence. For some people, it's to gain opulence. For them, it's to make the connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead regularly, again and again and again. Just as we may, let's say, do our sadhana so that we can involve ourselves in activities of the world again and again and again. We do our sadhana again and again and again. Not just as an antidote, but the means of elevation of consciousness. When elevation of consciousness is there, the allure, the attraction of being an enjoyer of material opulence diminishes and fades and eventually gone. Even there may be opulence or not opulence. Worship me by Vedic sacrifices, and with clear intelligence protect your citizens in accordance with the principles of religion. In their prayers, they were saying we weren't properly caring for our citizens because we were so ambitious. They didn't say they exploited them, but they weren't properly caring for them. As you live your lives, begetting generations of progeny, and encountering happiness and distress, birth and death, always keep your minds fixed on me. Because they're not asking for liberation, they're asking for remembrance. So he's indicating by this constant remembrance of me, you may move on to this situation, that situation, whatever the situation, but keep your mind fixed on me as you're passing through the circumstances of life. Be detached from the body and everything connected to it, remaining self-satisfied. Steadfastly keep your vows while concentrating your minds fully on me. So he said it 3 times now, because that's what they're asking. So he's giving the power, he's empowering them to do so on the strength of their steadfast devotion. That's how you can remember Krishna. Say it negatively. Without steadfast devotion, you're not going to always remember Krishna. If devotion is in an intermediate stage or unsteady, then your remembrance of Krishna is going to be unsteady. And tribulations will take you way over there into problem solving. And good situation are going to take you way over there into being the enjoyer of the good situation. Forgetting Krishna in either direction. In this way, you will ultimately attain me, the supreme absolute truth. Shukadeva Goswami said, having instructed the kings, Lord Krishna, the supreme master of all the worlds, engaged male and female servants in bathing and grooming them. O descendant of Bharata, that's Parikshit, the Lord then had King Sahadev. King Sahadev was the son of Jarasandha, who he had anointed. He had Sahadev honor them with offerings of clothing, jewelry, garlands, sandalwood paste, all suitable for royalty. After they had been properly bathed and adorned, Lord Krishna saw that they dined on excellent food. He also presented them with various items befitting the pleasure of kings. Honored by Lord Mukunda and freed from tribulation, the kings shone splendidly, their earrings gleaming just as the moon and other celestial bodies shine brilliantly in the sky at the end of the rainy season. Then the Lord arranged for the kings to be seated on chariots drawn by fine horses and adorned with jewels and gold, and, pleasing them with gracious words, he sent them off to their own kingdom. So lots of things. Their initial appeal when they're in prison for some time was, please free us from prison. And to free them from prison, Krishna would have to deal with Jarasandha. So implied was defeat Jarasandha. So he certainly defeated Jarasandha through Bhima's work. But there's several other steps involved. The several other steps coming shortly after this is the Rajasuya Yagya commences, and kings from all over who had agreed to accept the sovereignty of Yudhisthira as the emperor, they came. Even Shishupal came. But when the main event that Yudhisthira had in mind was that in the presence of all the demigods, because the demigods were visible to even ordinary people, because they came to bless and to receive, because offerings were being made to the demigods. Commentary by our acharyas is the purpose of Yudhisthira offering items to the demigods was he was actually offering to the personality of Godhead through them. And he wanted them to see that when the stage of the yajna was the greatest person in the assembly was to be honored, Krishna was to be honored above them. He's the one to be honored amongst everyone. There's no one equal to and greater than him. He's the one to be honored. He wanted the demigods to understand that. No, he's a king, but he's a very powerful personality, and it was his purpose, explicitly. The demigods could understand who is supreme, and everyone could understand who is supreme. Unquestionably, the supreme person, Krishna. He wanted the world to see it, and the emperor of the world was wanting to proclaim it and was proclaiming it through the yajna. Except Shishupal couldn't stand it, and he had a little problem because of that. So all of this is sequenced by Krishna's arrangement to fulfill his, one of the bigger purposes, Pritranaya Sautanam Vinashaya Traduskatam. But in the course of all these events, the details and details and details are very, very beautifully arranged, where knowing what's in the heart of each of his devotees, let's just take the kings. They were devotees, but they were mixed devotees. They weren't pure devotees. And by the time this pastime was complete, they had become pure devotees. By that delay from Krishna coming to defeat Jarasandha and release them from prison, it was several months. Their absorption in meditation upon Krishna, in devotion to Krishna, not just prayer, because it may have started, when's he going to come and get us out of here? But because their absorption was not just on the selfish side, their absorption was upon Krishna himself, they became freed of their material contaminations, the material attractions for enjoyment. And then they were ready to be freed, and then ready to receive this benediction that Krishna gave them. Fixed devotional service, fixed bhakti. So sometimes, it's very nice, sometimes we have to go through some difficulty. And we don't think, why should we go through some difficulty? We're trying to be nice devotees. I'm just listening to a recording of the difficulties that Prabhupada underwent. The story was told, I didn't know. Because it was well known that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted preaching to go on in the West. When he arranged for two of his sannyasis to go to England, he requested money from each of the Gaudiya Mas to send them on their way and to print the book Sri Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, etc., etc. When Prabhupada, they weren't successful. When Prabhupada was ready to go, he requested one of his sannyas godbrothers, who said, well, first we have to get together and examine whether you're fit to go or not. And if we decide that you're fit to go, then you're under our authority and you'll do as we say. No, it didn't go very far. No, it was... Anyway, Prabhupada met lots and lots and lots of opposition. Lots of opposition. From his anyway, without all the listing of the things. Prabhupada endured hardships to achieve what he wanted to achieve, what he was instructed to achieve. And he never complained. He remained steadfast in his devotion, exactly what Krishna is saying to the kings, what Krishna is saying to us, in other words. We may face obstacles in the course of whatever your duties are, and your health, or your sadhana, or your whatever it is. There's going to be obstacles. It's just the nature of the world. And it's not that Krishna is being unkind or negligent any more than he was unkind or negligent with Prabhupada or anyone else. Just this morning, starting at 5:30, I gave a class to the Chinese devotees, giving details of ways in which Prabhupada was challenged. Here's a little Prabhupada story I told this morning. The first Rath Yatra in the United States, first Rath Yatra in the West, was in San Francisco. Do you know the story? Malati, at a Pier 1 import store, saw some carved figures that looked to her like they had come from India. So she purchased them and brought them before Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, showed them those little jagannaths that are that big, you know, have seen those? Hand carved. She placed them before Prabhupada and said, is this from India? Prabhupada immediately paid his obeisances right at his desk and said, this is the form of the universe, Lord of the universe. Malati's husband was Shyamasundar, who was known to be artistic and creative. So he asked Shyamasundar, can you carve Jagannath deities so we can have a Rath Yatra? And it was like out of the blue, just Krishna descended with this idea. He did. The deities were very tall. They're still worshipped in Berkeley Temple. Very tall deities. And they had their first Rath Yatra. Jayananda built the Rath Yatra cart with no budget because they didn't have money. So he just begged and received donations for railroad ties to make the beams, railroad ties. It was a big, heavy cart, boy. And the wheels, etc. Very creative. And so there was a big splash in the news about a Rath Yatra in Golden Gate Park. There was a group of, I guess you could call them counter-revolutionaries, called the Black Panthers. There were African-American people that, you know, were against the war, like many people were against the war, and they were a little militant. And for some reason, they had a dislike for Srila Prabhupada. So the word was spread that Prabhupada, they wanted to attack Prabhupada during the Rath Yatra because they knew he would be there. And the word got to the devotees. So the devotees went to Prabhupada and said, don't go, Black Panthers, they're very dangerous. And Prabhupada insisted on going. And so the devotees got sticks. So in fact, the Black Panthers came and they're showing their sticks, and I don't know exactly how violent he got with the Black Panthers, but Prabhupada was protected. And the Rath Yatra went on with a big success. It's not a major part of the Rath Yatra news, but at least the devotee community at that time knew Prabhupada's life was at risk. So it's not just physical harm. There's obstacles and there's difficulties that anyone that does anything right, so what to speak of, you don't do it exactly right, but if you do things exactly right, as Prabhupada did, there'll still be opposition and difficulty. So expect some opposition and difficulty, because it's the nature of purification, the nature of the world in which we live. Don't be surprised when it comes, because it's going to come. And when it comes, stay steadfast in your determination, which is what Krishna is saying to these kings. So there's lessons for all of us. Remain fixed in your devotion. And with your devotion, there's duties. In their case, it's kings, and for us, it's whatever our duties are. And there's going to be challenges and ups and downs and allurements of, in their case, back again to the world of opulence. And he decorated them with opulence, jewels and fine clothing and this and that. But be protected. And by hearing and remembering, it's a good set of prayers. He just told them several times, whatever the circumstance, keep your mind fixed on me. And surely you'll come to me. Same as he says in Bhagavad Gita. So it's a nice section. Prayers within seeking constant remembrance. Later you can go back and read this section if you like, so you can help yourself in your practice of trying to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. See if there's some discussion. And then we're going to have a little arti, I think, right? Yeah. Anyone would like to share some thoughts or ask some question? Yes?
Always remembering Krishna means remembering his pastimes, or what is
You can make a nice long list of ways by which you can remember Krishna. It's not a short list. Ways in which you can remember Krishna are many. You have deities in your home? Okay, so there's one way you can remember Krishna in a regulated fashion, but it's not just the rituals, but it's the devotion and thinking of ways that you can make something nice or provide something nice or have a nice festival or something that's for their pleasure. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, distributing this knowledge in so many varieties of ways, etc. There's so many ways by which one can remember Krishna. Not just remember his pastimes. But, that's what we're doing right now, hearing his pastimes. Something else? Okay, let's have arti. Are we ready? Here comes Ladu Gopal. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.